They thought he was just an old man. No medals on his chest, no rank on his shoulders, just a quiet figure standing among powerful men in uniform. When the general asked his question, it wasn't meant to honor him. It was meant to embarrass him. "How many kills did you have?" Some smiled. Some laughed. Some waited for the old man to stutter. But he didn't. He looked down at his hands, hands that once shook the ground of battle, and spoke calmly. 2 words. That was all it took. The laughter died instantly. The room changed. And the truth about war, the kind no medals can explain, filled the air. Because some men don't count kills as victories. They count them as burdens. And that day, an old veteran reminded everyone what real strength looks like. The military hall was grand. Polished floors, golden chandeliers, walls lined with framed photographs of battles long past. It was a place where power spoke softly but carried immense weight. High-ranking officers stood in groups, their uniforms heavy with medals and ribbons. Laughter echoed, confident and careless. This was their world, structured, disciplined, unquestioned. And then there was the old man. He stood near the edge of the room, almost invisible. His red cardigan looked out of place among pressed uniforms. His hair was thin and gray, his posture slightly bent, but his eyes carried something deeper, something time hadn't erased. Most assumed he was a guest, maybe a retired clerk, maybe someone's grandfather. The USMC General noticed him late. Tall, sharp, commanding, a man used to being obeyed without question. His eyes narrowed slightly as they rested on the old man. "Who invited him?" someone whispered. The general stepped closer, curiosity mixed with amusement. The room subtly quieted. Authority has a way of doing that. "So," the general said, voice calm but edged with challenge, "you served, didn't you?" The old man nodded once. A smirk crossed the general's face. "And how many did you take down?" he asked casually. "How many kills?" A few officers chuckled. It sounded like a test, or a joke. The old man didn't answer immediately. He looked around the room, at the medals, the confident faces, the pride. Then his gaze dropped to the small green notebook clutched against his chest. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, enough to last a lifetime. The general frowned. "That's not a number." The old man raised his eyes, and for the first time, the room felt uneasy. "Because," he said quietly, "some numbers aren't meant to be celebrated." Silence crept in. No one laughed now. Something had shifted, and no one yet understood what they had just awakened. The silence didn't break immediately. It spread, like a shadow moving slowly across the room, swallowing every laugh, every whisper, every trace of arrogance that had filled the hall just moments ago. The general straightened his posture. His confident expression faltered, replaced by something unfamiliar, restraint. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, more carefully now. The old man didn't answer right away. He shifted the small green notebook in his hands, his fingers trembling slightly. It was worn, its edges frayed, as if it had been opened and closed more times than anyone could count. "I mean," the old man said softly, "that some things follow you home." A murmur passed through the officers. This wasn't the response they had expected. This wasn't bravado. This wasn't pride. The general crossed his arms. "War is war," he said. "We all carry numbers." The old man finally looked directly at him. "No, sir," he replied. "Some of us carry faces." The room froze. He took a step forward, slow, deliberate. Marines unconsciously made space for him, as if instinct told them to. "I was young," the old man continued. "Barely older than the men you command now. I followed orders. I did what was required. I did it well." His voice never rose. That made it worse. Every mission ended with a report. Every report ended with numbers. Clean. Simple. He tapped the notebook lightly. But none of those numbers tell you who woke up screaming at night. None of them tell you how many times you smell smoke where there is none. None of them tell you how quiet a man can become. The general's jaw tightened. "You're saying kills don't matter?" he asked. The old man shook his head slowly. "I'm saying they never stop mattering." One of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably. Another removed his cap, holding it against his chest without realizing why. "I stopped counting years ago," the old man went on. Not because I forgot, but because I remembered too well. He opened the notebook. Inside were no numbers, no tallies, just names, dates, places, short notes written in careful handwriting. The general's breath caught. "What is that?" he asked quietly. The old man closed the notebook again. "That," he said, "is why I don't joke about kill counts." For the first time since he had entered the room, the old man's voice wavered, just slightly. "I came here today because someone said this place honored service. I didn't expect applause. I didn't expect salutes." He paused, but I didn't expect laughter either. The general stood still. Around them, hardened men who had faced battlefields now struggled to meet the old man's eyes. And somewhere in that silence, respect was being reborn, slowly, painfully, honestly. The general lowered his arms. It was a small gesture, but in that room, it meant everything. Authority was stepping back, making space for truth. "You kept names," he said, his voice no longer sharp. "What?" The old man's eyes moved across the faces surrounding him. Young captains, seasoned colonels, men who still believed strength was loud. "So I wouldn't forget," he answered, "and so I wouldn't pretend." He walked slowly toward the long oak table at the center of the hall. Each step echoed, not from sound, but from weight. A Marine instinctively pulled out a chair, then froze, unsure if he should. The old man didn't sit. "Every man in this room," he said, "knows how to pull a trigger. That's not what separates us." He rested the notebook on the table, but didn't open it. "What separates us," he continued, "is what we do after the shooting stops." The general nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "You serve a long time ago," one officer said carefully. "Different wars, different rules." The old man smiled faintly. "Different uniforms, same nights." A few men looked down. "I didn't come here to teach," the old man went on. "I came because I was invited to be honored." He glanced at the flags lining the wall. But honor isn't in ceremonies. It's in restraint. It's in remembering that every order has a human cost. The general took a step forward. "Sir," he said, the word coming naturally now, "what unit were you with?" The old man hesitated. "Not out of fear, out of habit." "Most of it," he replied, "was off the books." That single sentence landed heavier than any number ever could. T room understood. Black operations. No parades. No photographs. No official stories. Just missions that ended quietly, and men who returned quietly changed. "You won't find my medals displayed," the old man said. "Some of them were buried with friends who didn't make it home." A young lieutenant swallowed hard. "Then why keep the notebook?" he asked. The old man finally opened it again. "Because if I don't carry their names," he said, "who will?" The general removed his cap. The sound of fabric against fabric was soft, but it echoed like thunder. One by one, others followed. No command was given. No order was needed. The old man closed the notebook and held it to his chest once more. "I don't regret serving," he said. "I regret that war makes us forget what service costs." No one spoke. The hall, once filled with rank and noise, now felt like a memorial. And for the first time that day, the old man was no longer invisible. The general stood at attention, not because protocol demanded it, but because something inside him did. He looked at the old man, really looked this time, not as a curiosity, not as a story, but as a mirror. "Sir," the general said, his voice steady but humbled, "we failed you today." The words surprised everyone, including the general himself. The old man shook his head gently. "No," he replied. "You reminded me why silence exists." The general frowned. "Silence?" "Yes," the old man said, "because some truths can't survive noise." He glanced around the room. Men who once spoke easily now stood stiff, unsure where confidence had gone. "When I was young," the old man continued, "I thought strength was measured by how fearless you looked, how loudly you spoke, how proudly you counted." He tapped his chest lightly. "Turns out, real strength is learning to live with what you can't forget." The general nodded slowly. "We train our men to be lethal," he said. "We don't train them to carry the aftermath." The old man's eyes softened. "Then teach them this." He stepped closer to the general, lowering his voice so only those nearby could hear. "Don't ask them how many they killed. Ask them how many they remember. A chill ran through the hall. One of the colonels cleared his throat. Sir, he said to the general, permission to speak? The general nodded. My father, sir, the colonel said. He never talked about it. I thought he was ashamed. He paused. Now I think he was protecting us. The old man placed a hand briefly on the colonel's arm. That's love, he said, not weakness. The general straightened and faced the room. From this moment on, he said firmly, this hall will not tolerate mockery of service, past or present. No one questioned him. This man, the general continued, gesturing toward the old veteran, has given more than most of us will ever be asked to give. He turned back to the old man. You may not want recognition, the general said, but you have it. The old man inhaled deeply. Recognition fades, he replied. Understanding lasts. He looked at the flags again. If one young Marine walks away from this room knowing that silence can mean pain, then today mattered. The general raised his hand. This time, the salute was slow, precise, heavy with meaning. The old man didn't return it. He simply nodded, and somehow, that felt more powerful. The old man turned toward the exit. No announcement followed him. No applause. No one dared break the moment with noise. His footsteps were slow but steady, each one echoing softly against the polished floor. Marines parted without being told. Not out of command, out of respect. Just before he reached the door, the general spoke again. Sir, he said, may I ask you one last question? The old man stopped, but did not turn around. What do you want us to remember? The general asked. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the lights above. Then the old man answered. Remember that war doesn't end when the gunfire stops, he said. It just gets quieter. He turned then, facing the room one final time. Some men come home heroes, he continued. Some come home ghosts. Most come home somewhere in between. He looked at the youngest Marines in the hall, faces still untouched by the weight he carried. If you ever meet a quiet veteran, he said, don't test him. Don't joke with him. And don't ask him to prove anything. His hand tightened around the notebook. He's already carrying more than enough. The general nodded slowly. I won't forget, he said. The old man gave a faint smile. None of us do. He opened the door and stepped out into the daylight, disappearing from view as quietly as he had arrived. Inside the hall, no one moved. The general placed his cap back on his head, but something in him had changed. The room still held rank and order, but now it also held humility. Later that day, training schedules were updated. Briefings were adjusted. A new line appeared in the code of conduct. Respect silence. No explanation was added. None was needed. And somewhere beyond the walls of that hall, an old man walked on, not seeking recognition, not seeking forgiveness, just carrying names, just carrying memories, and teaching without meaning to what real honor truly looks like.